Futurama has to be my favorite television show. Not just animated, but overall. It's probably the most consistently good show in history, with not one quote-unquote bad episode. The episode where Fry becomes a caveman is what I'd consider the worst episode, but the least good episode is a better moniker. I can't decide if I would want another season, because while I would love more Futurama, the series has already ended on a very high note. The show has made me laugh, made me cry, and everything in between. More than ever, picking just 10 episodes is Herculean, but I pulled it off. This is my list, and if you disagree, you have the right to bite my... Futurama has a loose continuity, in that mostly the episodes can be watched in any order, but there are key elements that happen that change the course of the show. The best example of this is the Flying Brain Saga, which, among other things, explains why Fry went to the future and why he isn't the sharpest tool in the shed. My favorite episode of this saga is The Day the Earth Stood Stupid. Fry is the only one not under the influence of the brain's attempt to wipe out all thought in the universe, and hilarity ensues on Earth. Billy West says he based the role of Philip J. Fry on his own voice when he was Fry's age, and it really shows here when Fry has the most speaking lines in this episode. Quick tangent, Futurama is a bastion of vocal talent, as the entire show is mostly voiced by a small handful of actors. Perhaps the single best role in this episode, though, is Maurice LaMarche as the Big Brain. The voice works well at sounding like both a genius and a moron at the exact same time, which makes the best line in the episode work all the better as Fry hits him with plot holes and spelling errors. The episode is a ride as they go from the pet show to the library, and I enjoyed just about every minute of it. Weird how Nibbler is so smart and yet still insisted on attacking that balloon, though. Nerf! Bender is generally a robot with a hard outer shell but a soft, creamy center. In this episode, he completely forgoes the latter, and the writers put him in a setting where his being a greedy, selfish jerk works in totality.
Bender should not be allowed on television!
There are two particular reasons why I love this episode so much. First is the episode is filled to the brim with fourth wall breaking humor, something I was always privy to, but also makes sure not to overdo it at the same time. The other part is the scene where Bender auditions and completely botches the part. Both Bender's acting and Calculon's reaction arguably comprise the single best straight minute of Futurama. I met John DiMaggio and asked him about this scene, and he said that Maurice LaMarche, voice of Calculon, is normally very straight with his speech and delivery, but had to redo the line at least 6 different times because he wouldn't stop cracking up. Futurama was a product of its time, the right time for the show to exist. No two ways about it, Futurama could never exist today with some of its plot lines. One of which is where Fry gets sexually harassed by a new coworker who replaces Hermes. The reason why I love how Hermes requisitioned his groove back is that it cracks me up. It's just a funny episode, simple as that. Considering how the episode is about bureaucracy and has Bender saying the same line over and over again for the second half, that's an extra accomplishment. I would go further into it, but I don't want to ruin any jokes here. Even if they are ones you might have forgotten, you'll be laughing hearing them again. If you were to watch every episode of Futurama in order, I am of the opinion that this is the episode where you will realize Futurama is truly special. The episode is a little rough around the edges from it being early on in the series, with some scenes adopting a comic book art style and the characters' voices being different. But overall, its hilarity and world building is proof that Futurama hit the ground running even in the first season, a feat some might argue even The Simpsons, Groening's other brainchild, could not pull off for its golden age. Fry and Bender sign up to join the military at the recruitment office, where the lead recruiter sounds oddly a lot like Scruffy, the janitor. The episode is loaded with visual gags, even for a Futurama episode, which gives it a lot of extra jokes you might have missed the first time around. Normally, I'm not actually a huge fan of Zapp Brannigan. He's just a running joke about rank not bringing competency. But in this episode, his self-deprecating humor actually lands pretty well, including where he moonlights as a Watch Mojo narrator. In an episode that directly relates to the spring 2021 political climate, President Nixon gives every citizen of Earth $300. This means there are over 3 billion people on Earth in the 31st century. The episode goes over how different characters choose to spend their 300 big boys, with at least 7 storylines in all, more if you want to count the really small stuff like Scruffy changing his hair. My 2 favorites are Zoidberg, who provides a satirical look at the life of the rich, and Fry, who through the power of coffee, the episode even ends with a joke that has only gotten funnier over time. No context given, Amazon is a penny stock now. You think it has to do with those aliens shooting everything down? Char! Any fan of Futurama can tell you that the show is not just funny, but can get very emotional as well. One of the best examples of this is Leela's homeworld. Throughout the show, Leela was believed to be an alien humanoid, but the writers left subtle hints throughout previous episodes in the series as to her true origins. This episode brings a many-season story arc to a close that almost ended entirely differently. The episode also has a lot of humor. I know explaining a joke ruins it, but I am going to sacrifice this one. When the viewer sees the leg mutant near Fry's waist, they immediately assume he's going to kick him in the crotch. Instead of going for the low-hanging fruit, the writers subvert the expectation by having him kick him in the knee, which, coming unexpectedly, becomes its own joke. Up until this entry, episodes on this list had a focus more on laughs than deeper meaning. What could this mean for the next entries? Tatu! Futurama gets philosophical. Regardless of what you believe, Godfellas is a shockingly intricate analysis on the existence of a god, any god, and such ramifications, especially as to, if there is a god, why it is he seems to take a back seat to the action. Matt Groening is a self-described agnostic. The writer of the episode, Ken Keeler, does not have his religion on his Wikipedia page, but it would not surprise me if he were one as well because he takes such a balanced approach to what is otherwise a very fiery topic. An interesting tidbit some may overlook is how the character who refers to himself as God fulfilled his own maxim by sending Bender to save the monks locked in the observatory, making it look as though he did nothing at all to save them. By ending the episode with reconciling the idea of free will, shown through Bender, with the potential existence of a higher power, shown through God, it is no surprise that this episode won an award from the Writers Guild of America. Me! If you remember and recognize this episode's intro text, you know to skip this episode when it comes on. Jurassic Bark is not a bad episode, by any stretch of the imagination, but it is simply too good for its own good. The story details of Fry finding the mummified body of a dog he befriended in his former life, and the attempt to bring Seymour back to life. The episode details a relatable story of jealousy on Bender's behalf, before he realizes that being a friend means not always acting in self-interest. It also shows scenes of flashbacks to Seymour looking for Fry. I will leave it at that. If you have not seen this episode, to spoil the ending would be a disservice. There is really only one reason why Jurassic Bark is not number 1. This joke where Fry's parents completely miss seeing Fry in the freezer tube. I get his parents are supposed to be moronic, but this joke is just impractical and undermines the entire basis of the show. As usual, honorable mentions before we get to number 1. Now you could make the argument if you wanted to that the later episodes of Futurama were not as good as the first seasons. While I can technically agree, I must reiterate that there is not a single bad episode of Futurama. One episode of the latter seasons that barely missed the list is Stench and Stenchability, the episode where Zoidberg woos a woman voiced by the same person who played that important role on that one big show. Anyways, Zoidberg's section in this episode is him at his best, as he tries to grapple between doing what is ultimately best for the girl he cares about and his own feelings. In the end, Zoidberg does the right thing, and the episode ends with an ending that is unexpected, but also makes complete sense. Why was this episode not on the list itself, but instead merely an honorable mention? The other half of the episode is basically Bender being as big of a jerk as he was in the television episode, without being in a setting where it actually works. It is mostly, dare I say, not funny. The Zoidberg plot saves the episode though, and Futurama remains undefeated. Amazon Women in the Mood is a very popular episode, and with the meme of Snoo Snoo, it is not hard to see why. I can only give it an honorable mention though, because the pacing of the first half of the episode, before they land on Amazonia, doesn't grab attention very well. That's not to say the second half of it is not a ride, however.
Why?
Luck of the Fryrish might be one of the least funny episodes of Futurama. That's not to say it doesn't have jokes, and that those jokes don't land. The episode still has that. It just doesn't let the jokes get in the way of the story it wants to tell, switching between Fry's old life and new life. Every time I watch the big reveal, I get chills down my spine. As with Jurassic Bark, spoiling the ending would be a crime. If, instead, you are a fan of Futurama, you probably knew having this episode on the list was just a matter of which number. And to that I say, for being Jurassic Bark with an ending that is impossible not to smile from, Luck of the Fryrish is the best episode of one of the greatest shows ever made. In making this list and rewatching all of my favorite Futurama episodes, I have come to a conclusion in regards to what I said at the beginning of this video. I want one more season of Futurama. Is there a chance that it could be bad and ruin what is essentially Futurama's perfect run of not having a single dud episode? Yes, but I would be willing to take that chance. A lot of good things come out of taking risks despite the chance of angering the original fanbase. J.R.R. Tolkien went from The Hobbit to Lord of the Rings, Akira Toriyama went from Dragon Ball to Dragon Ball Z, and Matt Groening and crew went from The Simpsons to Futurama. If you're watching this video close to when it came out, I am currently streaming my attempts to beat Super Smash Bros. Ultimate Classic 9.9 with every character. I stream Sundays starting at 3:30 Eastern Time. Come check it out if the game interests you. You get to see me make both awesome and terrible plays.
And Dr. Zoidberg, it was your quick thinking